Okay.
Oh, thank you so much. Hi. Hi, good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Now, I want to look at 4 critical areas from the point of view of trying to take some general principles and apply them to your own case if you're a litigant in person or if you're a lawyer, to your understanding of how to run civil proceedings. Okay, the first is issues. Then I'm going to look at evidence, I'm going to look at the law, and I'm going to look at audio recordings and video recordings, because that comes up a lot from people, from my subscribers. Yeah, so let's just first look at the issues. I think one of the most interesting things about this trial, particularly at the point of closing arguments, is the way in which Johnny Depp's lawyers seem to understand what the critical issues were, and Amber Heard's lawyers seem really, to, in my view, to focus on the wrong issues. So just take an example. You've got Amber Heard's lawyers painting a picture of Johnny Depp as a washed-up, drug-fueled alcoholic who was a monster and out of control, and also said some really rather horrible and ugly things about Amber Heard. In fact, Justice Nicol, in his judgment, right at the end, as he was making a point about it, quotes in full, verbatim, a text that Johnny Depp sent, in which he talks about, wanting to do really rather obscene things to Amber Heard and ruin her life. Yeah. In a way, he hangs his hat on that persona of Johnny Depp that's, as I say, being painted large, the monster who scrawled weird, crazy, Hunter S. Thompson-esque rubbish on pictures and paintings, who obviously thought himself as a bit of a poet. Actually, a lot of actors are frustrated writers.
He's writing on the mirror again, and they try to blame her and say that she wrote Call Carly Simon. She didn't write that. Who was the lunatic in the house? Who was writing everywhere? There's no evidence she wrote that. She testified she doesn't even know who Carly Simon was until she was told. Let's look at how the relationship was bookended. You remembered Mr. Depp the other day in response to some text that we'll see later saying, I don't write like that. Of course he did. Even though he wrote the text under it that said, hopefully that cunt's rotting corpse is decomposing in the fucking trunk of a Honda Civic.
And here he is scrawling stuff on tabletops. All is such bullshit. Why be a fraud? All sorts of lunacy. Yeah. And when you look at Johnny Depp, when you see his history, where he came from a background, really humble background, with a mother who was abusive to all her family, physically and verbally, and is just basically learned how to retreat from conflict. Yeah, and it's kind of consistent with his sort of nature as an actor. You can just see the guy who's giving evidence is a little bit washed out in the witness box, slow, slightly confused, and you just wonder whether or not decades of cocaine, MDMA, magic mushrooms washed down with a few bottles of whiskey haven't really rather addled his brain and made him the warm, kind of lovable character and generous-hearted spirit that we actually know and love. I think we actually get to see who he really is during this trial, during the time in which he gives his witness testimony. So Amber Heard's lawyers have majored on this dimension of Johnny Depp. But really, if you are a jury member, and Hollywood, they're all a bit mixed up, are you really interested in that? Are you really going to connect that in some sort of chain of causation to him smashing the living daylights out of his wife? Now look, there's a lot of talk of him referring to monster. He messaged Elton John back in the day, describing himself as having a monster, as having rage. But are you really going to make the causal link between that necessarily and the absolutely appalling levels of physical and sexual violence that have been particularised in the Justice Nichols' judgment, but also during witness testimony, a courtroom in Virginia. And I, maybe there's a demon in him from childhood, and all the psychiatrists probably like would make a good story, wouldn't it? He finally explodes, and their paths collide. These two characters that really shouldn't be together, and they end up in this toxic relationship, and bang, he finally hits his mother, something he's been wanting to do for the last 40 years. It's a bit of a stretch, and certainly if you're a jury member, you really want to see what the evidence is in respect of actual physical violence. So I really think that in labouring the point, it kind of actually takes you in the wrong direction.
Moreover, you heard from multiple witnesses, including Officer Melissa Sines, Officer Tyler Haddon, and Officer William Gatlin, Isaac Baruch, Alejandro Romero, who saw Ms. Heard on or after May 21st, and saw no injuries to her face before she showed up to that courthouse with a mark on May 27th.
By contrast, Johnny Depp's lawyers, and they've got a remarkable young lawyer, Camila Vasquez, I think is her name, who seems to be the junior lawyer in the trial, but she seems to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and certainly the most impressive and powerful closing speeches, who just looks through the evidence from the perspective of the critical issue of whether or not she's lying and whether or not the physical abuse actually occurred. And she deals with the issue of Johnny Depp being a bit of a loon by pointing out little things. There's a moment when there's in Australia there was the wheels came off in Australia over 3 days in their house, and the two of them were alone together. I think he was doing Pirates 5 in 2015, and this is the famous vodka bottle incident, and he's written all sorts of nonsense all over mirrors. And then there's some red text which says, Carly Simon said it better, babe, which is a reference to her song, You're So Vain. And, she nicely seeded there the fact that Amber Heard had probably written that on top of his Hunter-esque Thompson nonsense, yeah. And that she's probably quite an histrionic, crazy person herself.
This is a picture of the same mirror, right?
That's correct.
But you didn't take this picture.
No, I did not.
This is the one that Ben King took.
And I don't see him in the mirror either.
I don't believe he claimed he had injuries, though. Is that right?
I did not hear Ben King talk about his injuries, no.
Okay. So you would agree, Ms. Heard, that the black text on the mirror says, quote, she loves naked photos of herself. So modern, so hot.
I had not read that yet. Before, but yeah, that's what it says.
But you were taking pictures of the text, but you had not read that before?
I haven't seen this. It didn't make sense to me at the time when I read it in person.
Okay. Again, Mr. Depp wrote that.
I don't know who else would have.
So, Ms. Heard, just to be clear, it's your testimony that Mr. Depp also wrote the message in red about Carly Simon saying it better, right?
That's correct.
You know Carly Simon sang the song You're So Vain, right?
I was told that.
So it's your testimony that Mr. Depp was writing messages to himself in the mirror back and forth.
The best I can describe it is it looked like a crazy conversation. It was on the walls, it was
with
on
himself.
lampshades, it was on cushions.
It's your testimony the crazy conversation was with himself.
That's what it looked like from the bloody messages I found.
And you would agree with me that in this photograph, the red text has been smudged with black paint, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let's please pull up, if we can, Defendant's Exhibit 375 again. The black smudge isn't in this picture that you took, right?
That's correct.
So Mr. Depp must have not liked his own message to himself.
I'm not quite sure what was happening when Ben took his photograph, no.
And she did an even better job of, absolutely laser guiding the jury's attention on the central issue of whether the violence occurred by producing in their closing argument evidence and recordings and so on of Amber Heard admitting to having hit him.
A long time. I know. Yeah.
No, when you fucking have a close
You didn't get punched. You got hit. I'm sorry I hit you like this, but I did not punch you. I did not fucking deck you. I fucking was hitting you. I don't know what the motion of my actual hand was, but you're fine. I did not hurt you. I did not punch you. I was hitting you.
How are you?
What am I supposed to do? Do this? I'm not sitting here bitching about it, am I? You are. That's the difference between me and you. You're a fucking baby.
Because you started.
You are such a baby. Grow the fuck up,
Because you
Johnny.
started physical fights.
I did start a physical fight.
Yeah, you did. So I had to get
Because-
the fuck out of there.
Yes, you did. So you did the right thing, the big thing. You know what? You are admirable.
Whereas there's very little evidence that certainly audio or video evidence of him hitting her. In fact, I don't think there is any. In fact, the best evidence that Amber Heard's lawyers put forward in this respect was the evidence of text messages and so on and so forth, which is apologising for letting the monster out, for being in a rage, for this will never happen again type of text messages. And although those may incriminate Johnny Depp, you might think, are they referring to the drug-fueled, chaotic, out of control monster, or are they referring to actual instances in which he punched her repeatedly or violently sexually assaulted her? And I think it would be difficult for a jury to decide. It's not black and white. He has not at any point in the evidence made anything approaching a confession. And there are a couple of other issues, if you like. One is the defamation issue. Did she recklessly publish? And it's so interesting. I think this is so interesting because ultimately, certainly where a jury is concerned, we're all interested. The jury want to know whether he was an abuser, physical. They don't want to know whether he was an emotional abuser because they've heard her being equally, if not more emotionally abusive to him. It's quite clear that on numerous occasions he would walk away, he would hide. She criticised, he attacked him for walking away for an argument. It was almost as if she was been looking for a fight. And so any sort of abuse that isn't actual physical abuse, again, I don't think the Amber Heard's defence lawyers did a good job there by raising that as a reason that the jury could find against Johnny Depp was because he'd been verbally abusive, because abuse is more than just physical abuse. Well, technically it is, but come on, physical takes it into a whole different realm, to a whole different level. So there, for me, they focus on another irrelevant issue.
She got that opinion and that impression by reviewing the medical records of Miss Heard. She talked about the role of coercive control that Mr. Depp exercised over Miss Heard. The effect of coercive control, she said, was drastic, and it was composed of things such as possessive jealousy, the imbalance of power, not only in physical stature and physical size, but in where they were in their life and their career, by intimidation. She said writing obscene messages to your partner can absolutely be intimidating behavior. She said that Mr. Depp, after reviewing the evidence, banging and throwing and hitting things in the household, that's psychological aggression. Punching a wall, throwing something, screaming, that is abuse. That's abuse, ladies and gentlemen. Imagining having a painting area where you're drawing two canvases and you and your husband get in a fight, and while you are asleep that night, he takes the bloody stump of his finger and dips it in paint and destroys your paintings. Ladies and gentlemen, that's abuse.
Now, another area in which I think the lawyers have made a mistake is that Amber Heard's lawyers decided to bring a counterclaim. Now, I often talk about claims, defences and counterclaims in my vlogs on UK civil litigation, similar basic principle in the United States. So she's, as well as, so if you look at the pleadings, you know, he's got his claim against her for defamation. It's a piece of civil litigation, although, you know, it's defamation, it's still the basics. That you've got a defence, and a counterclaim in which she's alleging that he's destroyed her reputation. And this is a kind of a sidebar issue in the proceedings, which is Depp's previous lawyer got together with the Daily Mail, and he said that she'd hoaxed the whole thing, that the incident that occurred on May the 21st, her and her friends had trashed the place to make it look as if it got violent, and perhaps even made Amber Heard up to show that she got a red face, that she was bruised, and so on and so forth. Basically, it was a hoax. So the counterclaim is alleging that he, or rather Johnny Depp's lawyer, and Johnny Depp's lawyer is Johnny Depp's agent, so they can sue Johnny Depp personally, even though the agent's nowhere on the scene. They are counterclaiming that bad press, that those lies, that allegation of hoax also qualifies as defamation, and therefore she's entitled to damages for the loss to her career. Now, when you do civil litigation, you know, often, not always, lawyers seem to want to throw in the kitchen sink. And I'm not a big fan of the kitchen sink approach, because it can tend to distract and obfuscate from the strengths of your own case or the strengths of your own defence. And really, the jury have to make a decision as to the amount of damages, by the way. The judge doesn't do that. So I'm just wondering to what extent that they will find, even if they find that Johnny Depp's lawyers defamed her, that she suffered any real lasting financial loss.
Do you have an understanding of whether Aquaman 2 was the last option in Ms. Heard's contract with Warner Brothers?
Oh, no. Aquaman 2 has not even been released, and Warner Brothers has a fourth option for Aquaman 3 or another movie where Mira appears, that character, and they've agreed to double the salary again. So it's in success, and that assumes that they recast and that they make the movie.
Are you aware of Ms. Arnold's testimony that Ms. Heard would have made several $1 million on endorsement deals, such as the one she had with L'Oreal?
I'm aware of that testimony.
Do you agree with that opinion?
No.
Why not?
Again, this is a business of personalities. We didn't, after the breakout moment that Ms. Arnold talked about, Christmas 2018, we didn't see endorsement deals flocking to Ms. Heard during that 16-month period before Adam Waldman made a few statements in the London Daily Mail, I believe it was. We didn't see those endorsements coming to her.
Jury's going to think, compared to Johnny Depp, love, you know, 6 years, his career's gone down the sinkhole, and you're still going to probably appear, even if it's in an edited version, in Aquaman 2. Yeah? So I think they're going to have difficulty. And now what it means is they're distracting from the key issue. Did violence occur? I'll give you my own conclusions at the end of the vlog, my own theory. And if you watch these closing arguments, you'll see, particularly the lady lawyer for Amber Heard, who comes second, she makes her closing arguments around this counterclaim issue, and it drags the power of the closing speech away from the central issue of the fact of whether she's been hit or not.
I get to say good afternoon. And I know you've been listening to everybody for a long time here, and I echo Ben's very strong thank you to all of you for this extreme service and extraordinary service. We really appreciate it. I'm going to go really fast and try to go as quick as I can so that you can get a break from us and go make your decision. I know you're probably itching to do it at this point. He came in here and lied to you and said he's here to get his reputation back. It's just one of many lies in this case, but it's a really big one, because here we are, 6 weeks of your time, precious time, 6 weeks of this court's time, for what? For nothing. Only to go after Amber. That's psychological abuse. He's going after Amber for nothing, because he wants to put her through this again, the third time. So we're fighting back, and that's the counterclaim. She finally has said enough, enough. And we're asking you to finally hold this man responsible. He has never accepted responsibility for anything in his life. You've heard it this whole time. He hasn't admitted.
She makes her closing arguments around this counterclaim issue. And it drags the power of the closing speech away from the central issue of the fact of whether she's been hit or not, into this whole area of whether this guy's, Johnny Depp's lawyer, defamed her by claiming that Amber Heard had hoaxed the whole thing. Now look, it's a dream. Remember, you don't need to find that Amber Heard hoaxed the whole thing to find for Johnny Depp. Yeah. Maybe there wasn't a hoax. You know, the jury will probably be thinking, yeah, this lawyer's full of bullshit. She didn't completely hoax the whole thing. And if you listen to the witnesses of Amber Heard, the people who lived in and around her, because Johnny Depp had, I think, about 5 penthouses on the top floor of the East Columbia building in California, and Amber Heard was living with Johnny Depp in one penthouse. Her sister was living in another. Her friend Rocky and her boyfriend, a very convincing witness called Lee Drew, was living in another. I think an artist was living in another, and they're all connected by, at the Metzline level, by a corridor that runs all through them. So everybody was close to Johnny over a period of few years. So this counterclaim hoax issue, you don't need to make it out in order to find against Amber Heard. You can, you can just find that Amber Heard was doing it on her own, was lying, was manufacturing, particularly arguably the violent sexual assaults. And here again, it meant that the two lawyers for Amber Heard, when they should have been absolutely majoring on the issue of Lee Drew, Raquel, his girlfriend, Amber Heard's best friend, who gave good, long depositions, i.e. they were video recorded, they didn't actually turn up at court. They should have been absolutely majoring on that evidence, particularly Lee Drew's evidence, whom Justice Nicol, in his judgment, rates as very, very highly as a credible witness. And I rate him very highly as a credible witness too. He's very, very convincing as a witness.
I understand it was a long time ago, but do you recall under what circumstances you met him?
Funny enough, I actually do very clearly. I had come over under the auspice of what was called Family Movie Night, and it was Amber and Johnny and Jack. I honestly don't remember whether Lily Rose was there. She might have come later at a certain point. And it was just us in their apartment eating burgers and watching movies. I was outside with the other officer, so I can't say with any specificity what happened inside. I don't know whether anybody was in earshot. I don't know whether everybody else was around. They told me specifically it was one-on-one, and I was outside the door with the male officer, and specifically my communication with him was asking what, if anything, could be done, because we were obviously upset. And his comment to me specifically was, there's damage in these apartments, her face is red, if she wants to file a report, we have enough here to go pick him up.
When you first saw her, did you notice any marks on her face?
Yes.
Describe the marks, please.
To be very honest with you, I don't actually remember which side of her face it was, but I do distinctly remember there being a red mark and a small bruise on her cheekbone, and red marks just above her eyebrow and to the right side, or to the side of her eyebrow. We let ourselves into PH3 together to go check on her and make sure everything was okay. When we came in, the kitchen was completely, I wouldn't say it's trashed, but it was out of order enough for something to be off. And then when we turned the corner on the section of counter next to the kitchen sink, there was something written on the counter, and I don't know, I can't remember what material it was, and to be honest, I can't actually recall exactly what was written. It was something very, very weird, like all is such a fraud or something akin to that. Yes.
Did you notice any bruising or other signs of injury?
Yes, pretty significant.
What did you observe?
I noticed specifically she had pretty significant bruising on the inside of both eye sockets, kind of extending down the bridge of her nose, and her forehead was red.
They also, I don't think, made enough of the weakness of the police evidence, because the police turned up on this incident on the 21st of May, because Amber Heard made a kind of an emergency call to a friend in New York who said Johnny's going crazy, and he called 911, and the police came around in Los Angeles, and they didn't see any any evidence of physical abuse, any injuries. And they didn't even see that the flat had been particularly trashed. Yeah, but rather than major on the fact that the police actually got it wrong, because they didn't take contemporaneous notes, because they turned up, they only did their dispositions 2 years later. They're probably on a regular week visiting dozens of incidents and not drilling into the detail. They left a business card and they went. They didn't really take much interest in the physical injury and the victim herself, because she said, "No, I'm not talking." She decided she did not want the police involved, and so they left. And the police completely got the time wrong. They said that they were there for like an hour, and actually the video recorded in the lift shows they're only there for 15 minutes around that time. They're not credible witnesses, even though they're the police. Why didn't they use those closing arguments to really attack the caliber of the police evidence and to magnify the power of Lee Drew's evidence and Raquel's evidence, and perhaps the evidence of Amber Heard's sister?
Okay, my question was, after you arrived, you observed injuries to Ms. Heard, right?
Yes.
Do you remember seeing that her head was bloody, where a chunk of hair had been ripped out of the back of her head?
Yeah. Yes.
Was her head actively bleeding when you saw her?
It was, it wasn't like dripping down her head, but it was raw and red.
Was it actively bleeding, if you remember?
Define actively bleeding.
Was there blood?
Yes.
How could you tell hair had been ripped out of her head?
There was a bloody patch with hair missing.
Where was her face red?
Her whole face.
Could the redness have been from crying?
It could have been.
Where did her nose appear to be swollen?
It'd be like the upper bridge.
Did you observe that Ms. Heard had